They saw a lone woman in a designer dress and thought they held all the power. 15 seconds later, 3 of them were on the floor, and she hadn't even spilled her drink. They just picked the wrong target. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Anya Sharma was invisible. After 18 months navigating the dust-choked landscapes of a war-torn country, the oppressive quiet of the Azure Catch felt like a different planet. Perched on the edge of Seattle's Puget Sound, the restaurant was a symphony of muted elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the inky, star-dusted water, where fairies glided like silent ghosts. The air, thick with the scent of grilled lemon and sea salt, was a welcome replacement for the acrid smell of sand and cordite. Anya, a 30-year-old Navy SEAL combat medic, had traded her multi-cam fatigues for an emerald silk dress that shimmered under the soft, recessed lighting. It was a color chosen to celebrate life, a stark contrast to the world of muted earth tones she usually inhabited. She'd chosen a small, secluded table, a strategic corner that offered a panoramic view of the entire dining room, a habit ingrained so deeply it was now instinct. She was simply Anya tonight, a woman enjoying a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and the promise of pan-seared scallops. She craved the anonymity, the simple luxury of being just another face in a sophisticated crowd. But her peace was a fragile thing. Across the room, near the polished mahogany bar, a discordant note soured the restaurant's harmony. 3 men, textbook examples of the Pacific Northwest tech bro elite, were growing louder with each round of expensive craft beer. They wore designer blazers over ironic t-shirts, their wrists adorned with the latest smartwatches that flashed with notifications. Their laughter was a percussive, unpleasant bark that sliced through the gentle jazz trio playing in the corner. The ringleader, a man with a jawline that seemed chiseled from pure arrogance and a haircut that cost more than Anya's monthly car payment, was holding court. Anya mentally nicknamed him Chadwick, or Chad. His 2 companions, sycophantic satellites orbiting his ego, echoed his booming laughter and amplified his crude remarks about the other diners. Their voices, dripping with entitlement, were a poison seeping into the serene atmosphere. Anya watched them for a moment, her trained eyes cataloging their movements, their posture, their escalating aggression. They weren't just drunk, they were predatory. Her hand instinctively tightened around the stem of her wine glass as she took a slow, calming breath, trying to force the sentinel in her mind to stand down. Tonight, she wasn't on duty. Tonight, she was just a woman in a green dress, hoping to enjoy her dinner in peace. The trio's roving, predatory gaze eventually settled on a new target. Tucked into a cozy booth near the window was a young couple, their faces glowing with a shy, incandescent happiness. Anya recognized the look instantly. New love, fragile and precious. The woman, Chloe, was showing her companion, Liam, a delicate ring on her finger. They were celebrating their engagement, lost in a private world that the men at the bar seemed determined to shatter. Chadwick slid off his bar stool with a predatory grace, his friends flanking him like a pair of hyenas. They swaggered over to the couple's table, their presence immediately casting a pall over the intimate moment. Liam looked up, his smile faltering as he took in the 3 imposing figures looming over them. Well, look what we have here, Chad slurred, his voice oozing a condescending charm. He ignored Liam completely, his eyes fixed on Chloe. Celebrating something special? Don't tell me this guy actually locked you down. Before either of them could respond, Chad did the unthinkable. He slid into the booth next to Chloe, forcing her against the plush leather. The invasion of personal space was so sudden, so violating, that the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He draped a heavy arm over her shoulders, picked up her flute of champagne, and raised it in a mock toast. To the bride-to-be, he announced to the room, "May your life be less boring than your choice in men." His companions laughed, positioning themselves to block Liam, who was now on his feet, his face pale with a mixture of fear and fury. "Hey man, that's enough," Liam stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Please, just leave us alone." The plea for civility only seemed to fuel Chad's aggression. "Or what?" he sneered, his face inches from Chloe's. "You gonna call my manager?" From her corner table, Anya's mind shifted from civilian to operator in a nanosecond. The calm detachment she'd been cultivating evaporated, replaced by the cold, clear logic of threat assessment. Primary threat. Chadwick, male, approximate 6 feet 2 inches, 200 pounds. Agitated, aggressive, intoxicated. 2 accomplices positioned to flank and block. Victim proximity is high. Nearest improvised weapon. Heavy salt shaker, 3 feet away. Optimal exit. Kitchen service door, 10 yards behind me. Civilian casualties. High probability if uncontrolled escalation occurs. Her pulse remained steady, a metronome ticking in a silent, internal world of tactical calculation. The sentinel was awake, and she was ready. Anya rose from her chair, the silk of her dress rustling in the suddenly silent room. She moved with a fluid economy of motion, not a hint of aggression in her posture, yet every step was deliberate, precise. The men were so engrossed in their power play that they didn't notice her until she was standing directly beside their stolen spotlight. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was calm, clear, and carried a surprising weight that cut through the tension. "I think it's time for you to return to the bar and let this couple finish their celebration." Chadwick turned his head slowly, a smirk spreading across his face as he took in Anya's appearance. He saw a woman of average height, slender in a fashionable dress. An easy target. "Whoa, easy there, Karen," he scoffed, the insult dripping with condescension. "Nobody called the fun police. Go back to your Pinot Grigio before you get yourself hurt." His friend to the left, emboldened by Chad's bravado, took a step toward Anya. "Yeah, beat it. This is grown-up time." He reached out, intending to shove her dismissively by the shoulder. It was a casual, arrogant gesture of intimidation. It was also the last mistake he would make that night. The instant his fingers made contact, 15 years of relentless, brutal training took over. Anya's body became a conduit for pure, kinetic efficiency. 1. In a motion too fast to follow, she caught the man's wrist. It wasn't a slap or a grab. It was an acquisition. She twisted it inward, leveraging his own forward momentum. A dull pop echoed in the quiet room as his wrist dislocated. Before he could even register the pain, she had spun him around, driving him face first into the unforgiving marble floor. The sickening thud of his body hitting the ground silenced the jazz trio. 2. Chadwick, momentarily stunned, released Chloe and lunged at Anya, his face a mask of rage. He was bigger, stronger, fueled by alcohol and ego. But he was clumsy. Anya sidestepped his bull rush as if he were moving through water, a simple evasion maneuver she could do in her sleep. As he stumbled past, she delivered a precise, open palm strike to the pressure point on the side of his neck, the brachial plexus. His nervous system momentarily short-circuited. His legs buckled, and he crashed into an empty table, sending a cascade of silverware and shattered glass to the floor. 3. The last man, seeing his friends neutralized in the span of 5 seconds, made a desperate break for the exit. His flight path took him directly past Anya. She didn't chase him. She simply pivoted, extending her leg in a perfectly executed sweep. His feet went out from under him, and he went down hard, his head narrowly missing the brass door handle. The entire confrontation lasted 15 seconds. Anya stood in the center of the chaos she had so clinically created. Her breathing was even, her expression as placid as a frozen lake. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't broken a sweat. She hadn't even spilled her drink, which was still sitting at her table, perfectly untouched. The silence in the restaurant was absolute, broken only by the groans of 3 very surprised men. The spell of shocked silence was broken by a collective gasp from the diners. Anya immediately turned her attention away from the neutralized threats and walked back to the young couple. "Are you two all right?" she asked, her voice returning to its earlier, softer tone. Chloe was trembling, but she nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. Liam could only stare, his mouth agape, at the scene of devastation. The restaurant manager, a flustered man in a rumpled suit, scurried over, his phone already in his hand. "Mom, I'm calling the police. We can't have this violence." "Please do," Anya replied calmly. "They assaulted that woman, and then they assaulted me. I acted in defense of others, and then in self-defense." As if on cue, Chadwick began to stir, pushing himself up on one elbow. "She's crazy," he yelled, his voice cracking. "She attacked us. We were just talking to them. That is an absolute fabrication." The voice that cut through the room was sharp, confident, and radiated authority. A middle-aged woman in a flawlessly tailored power suit stood up from a nearby table. She adjusted her glasses and fixed the manager with a stern gaze. "Officer," she said, anticipating the arrival of law enforcement, "my name is Eleanor Vance, and I'm a partner at Harris, Vance & Associates. I witnessed the entire event. These three gentlemen initiated unprovoked verbal harassment, which escalated to physical battery when that man," she pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Chadwick, "forcibly put his hands on that young woman. When this lady intervened verbally, the second gentleman," she gestured to the man still groaning on the floor, "committed assault by making unwanted physical contact with her. Her response was a textbook example of justified use of force in the defense of others and herself. I will be happy to provide a formal statement." Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The senior officer, a veteran named Frank Miller with tired eyes that had seen it all, surveyed the scene with a weary sigh. Broken glass, overturned furniture, and 3 well-dressed men who looked like they'd been hit by a bus. "Okay," he said to the room at large. "Who wants to tell me what happened?" Chadwick and his friends immediately launched into their well-rehearsed victim narrative. But their story was quickly dismantled, not just by the formidable Eleanor Vance, but by a dozen other witnesses. The final nail in their coffin came from an unexpected source. A young food blogger who had been live-streaming her dinner approached Officer Miller's partner, her phone held out. I think I got most of it on video," she stammered. "I was trying to get a shot of my dessert. And then, well, this happened." The high-definition footage was damning, capturing every leering comment, every aggressive move, and the entire, breathtakingly efficient 15-second takedown. Officer Miller watched the blogger's video on his partner's phone, his expression shifting from weary skepticism to undisguised astonishment. He replayed the 15-second clip 3 times. The woman in the green dress moved with a terrifying grace, a brutal economy of motion that spoke of years of dedicated, professional training. There was no wasted energy, no theatrical flair, just a series of precise, debilitating actions. He walked over to Anya, who had remained calm and composed throughout the entire ordeal. "Ma'am," he said, his tone now laced with respect. "Forgive me for asking, but what kind of training do you have? That was not a weekend self-defense class." Anya met his gaze, offering a small, diplomatic smile. "I'm on active duty with the Navy," she said simply, the statement both an answer and a deflection. The implication hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. This wasn't just any sailor. Miller, a former Marine himself, recognized the quiet confidence, the utter lack of adrenaline shakes. This was someone from the sharp end of the spear. As Miller's partners were cuffing a protesting Chadwick and his friends, the digital world was already exploding. The food blogger's video, along with clips from half a dozen other patrons, had hit the internet. On Twitter, the hashtags #SeattleSavior and #WrongWoman were starting to trend. A 15-second clip of Anya's takedown, posted to TikTok, hit 1 million views before the police had even finished taking statements. The story had a life of its own now, a viral wildfire spreading across every platform. The next morning, the incident reached the desk of Anya's commanding officer, Eva Rostova. A formidable woman who had shattered more than her share of glass ceilings in the special operations community. Rostova watched the viral video in her office, a rare, approving smile touching her lips. She called Anya in. "Sharma," she began, her voice a mixture of stern authority and wry amusement. "I see you made some new friends in the city this weekend. Debrief me." Anya gave a concise, factual account of the evening. Rostova listened intently, nodding. You upheld the standards of this command, Sharma. You de-escalated until the point of no return, then you ended the threat with minimal necessary force. You turned a potentially ugly situation into a masterclass in professional conduct. She paused, leaning back in her chair. The public affairs office is going to have a field day with this. Just try to stay out of the limelight. But they both knew it was already too late for that. The consequences for the three men were as swift and brutal as Anya's takedown. Chadwick Vance was fired from his executive position at a major tech firm before his bail was even posted. The viral video and his arrest were a catastrophic violation of the company's ethics and conduct policies. The second man, a consultant at a top-tier firm, had his partnership revoked for behavior bringing disrepute upon the firm. The third, a financial analyst, had his professional license suspended and was subsequently terminated, his career in finance effectively over. Their arrogance had cost them everything. The story, however, created positive ripples as well. Inspired by Anya's intervention, Liam and Chloe started a Brave Bystander initiative at their university, a program designed to teach students how to safely and effectively intervene when they witness harassment. The Azure Catch, far from suffering bad press, became a local landmark. The manager placed a small, discreet brass plaque on the wall by the corner booth where Anya had sat. It read, "In memory of a night when courage shone brightly." Investigative journalists eventually uncovered Anya's full identity. Petty Officer First Class Anya Sharma, a decorated Navy SEAL, a combat medic with a record of valor that remained mostly classified. The revelation turned a viral moment into a national conversation about the quiet professionals who live among us. Military recruitment offices reported a significant uptick in inquiries from young women, inspired by a hero who looked like them. Months later, the media frenzy had subsided. Anya was back where she was most comfortable, training with her team, preparing for the next deployment, the world of viral videos and public acclaim a distant memory. The incident had become a case study in training academies, a perfect example of applying elite skills with discipline and restraint. That evening in Seattle had become a defining moment for many. For three men, it was a harsh, life-altering lesson in humility and respect. For a young couple, it was a terrifying ordeal that transformed into a mission of empowerment. For the public, it was a thrilling, fleeting glimpse into a world of quiet strength and hidden heroes. Anya's actions served as a powerful reminder that courage isn't about seeking conflict, but about having the skill and the will to end it when it finds you. Anya's story is incredible, but also sparks a broader question. What can and should we do when we witness injustice? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please comment with respect. For more stories about these everyday heroes, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.